Chapter 19, The Rightful Owner of Elixir, 2. I arrived at the Martial Righteous Alliance's Chufa branch that afternoon. Usually, small branches are maintained with about 50 people, and this place would be no different. I bought and wore expensive clothes and put on a human skin mask. I had purchased the mask from a martial arts general store that sold various miscellaneous tools. It's not made of actual human skin, despite being called human skin, 1. They say that in the past, real human skin was used, but in the current era, it just means it's made to be that intricate. There are few people in this martial world who know as much about human skin masks as I do. During the war with the For Evil sect, I wore masks almost daily for my safety as the Alliance leader. It was a time when assassins were sent from the opposing faction several times a day. Generally, human skin masks come in low, medium, high, and top grades. Low-grade masks were obviously noticeable, medium grade could only be distinguished by people with very keen eyes. High-grade masks couldn't be identified except by mask experts, and top-grade masks were so well made that even mask experts couldn't distinguish them. Those were mainly what I used. I spent some money and bought a high-grade mask. You might be shocked that a mask costs 1,000 Nyang, but masks have always been very expensive items. The ability to change one's face in the martial world has many implications. If treated as a mere plaything, it might be worth just a few Nyang, but if changing one's face can save a life, it becomes invaluable. With a high-grade mask, well-dressed clothes, and a changed voice, I became a completely different person. The reason for going to such lengths was to deceive him. I wanted to beat him until he confessed, but there was a wiser and more certain way to resolve this. Who are you looking for? I didn't hide my aura from the guard martial artists at the gate. Therefore, they would perceive me as a considerable expert. I'm here to see the branch leader. The martial artist looked at me cautiously. It was because my behavior was too confident. Where should I say you're from? Tell him I'm from the Heavenly Blade sect, too. The guard was startled at the mention of the Heavenly Blade sect. The Heavenly Blade sect was one of the 5 powers of the Central Plains. The 5 powers referred to the 5 most powerful forces in the current martial world. These were the 5 families and sects that might have vied for supremacy in the Central Plains if it weren't for me. They were families and sects with such immense power. I had kept them in check solely with my martial prowess. Knowing they would be crushed by my hand the moment they stuck out like a nail, they didn't dare move recklessly. Who from the Heavenly Blade sect should I say you are? Would you know if I told you? Guide me to the branch leader immediately. Jay, just a moment, please. One of the guards hurriedly ran inside. I'm a person who knows the inner workings of the 5 powers of the Central Plains inside out. Among them, the Heavenly Blade sect was the one I knew best and was most suitable for impersonation. The reason was simple. Ma Bongi, 3, the leader of the Heavenly Blade sect, was a man with complicated women issues. He had over 10 women and dozens of children. It was said that even the sect leader himself was confused about who was who. Ma Bongi's brothers were no different, saying blood doesn't lie. It was truly a complicated family. But whether one knows these inner workings or not, the name of the Heavenly Blade sect certainly works. As you can see from how these guard martial artists' actions became more brisk. Shortly after, I was guided to the branch leader's office. The discipline here is truly a mess. They didn't even properly verify who I was just because I came wearing expensive clothes and said I was from the Heavenly Blade sect. If I had been an assassin aiming to kill the branch leader, he would have been a dead man. Even for a small branch far from the main headquarters, this was a matter that should be severely punished according to Alliance rules. The branch leader's name was Gongjong, 4. This was the same person Guangdu had called Senior Warrior Gong earlier. He had a good appearance and bearing, seeming to fit the title of a great hero quite well. Welcome. You say you're from the Heavenly Blade sect? That's right. May I ask your esteemed name? Ma Yongcheng, 5. The current sect leader is my uncle. Gong Zhong's head lowered automatically. I've heard your name before. It's an honor to meet you like this. It's probably just a courtesy greeting, but it's actually laughable if you know the truth. Ma Yongcheng did exist, but as he was a reclusive figure within the family, very little was known about him outside. What exactly had he heard about my name? Please, sit over here. Gong Zhong guided me to the seat of honor. I walked and sat down as if it were natural, but inwardly I thought it was pathetic. No matter how high the other party's prestige, he is still officially a branch leader of the Martial Righteous Alliance. Moreover, Ma Yongqing isn't even the legitimate successor, yet he reacted like this. If a direct descendant of the Heavenly Blade sect had come, he might have even bowed. Was it because I had a preconception that he might be in league with Guak Dosu? In many ways, his behavior was irritating. But I tried to dispel my discomfort. Having unnecessary preconceptions could prevent me from making a cool-headed judgment. We exchanged a few conversations. I casually dropped some inside information about the Heavenly Blade sect that I knew as the Martial Righteous Alliance leader. From his perspective, it would seem like information that Ma Yongqing would know. Gong Zhong asked about a few things he had heard about the Heavenly Blade sect. Of course, there was nothing among them that I didn't know. Rather, when I corrected some misinformation, he finally seemed to believe me. Eventually, I brought up the main point. The reason I've stopped by here is that I have an urgent matter to discuss. Please, speak. We've been pursuing someone from our family. Who might that be? A man named Guak Dosu. The moment he heard the name Guak Dosu, I saw Gong Zhong's eyes flicker slightly. It was clearly different from just being surprised by an unexpected name. Why are you looking for Guak Dosu? Do you know who Guak Dosu is? Ah, of course. He's a villain with a large bounty on his head for committing all sorts of evil deeds. That's right. That's the man. I did some separate investigation and obtained information that he was involved in a hostage situation here. I heard you mediated. There was such an incident some time ago. What kind of idiot was it? Pardon? The fool who was taken hostage by him. Ah, it was the successor of the Biok clan Sword Manor. Biok Ri Dan. Must be a real imbecile. Gong Zhong showed a smile of agreement. His expression seemed to say that he couldn't quite say such things himself. I heard you associated with him, according to my information. Then he lowered his voice and said, sometimes in life, one must drink with fools, don't you think? That's true. Ha ha ha. Thinking his joke had landed, Gong Zhong laughed along. The atmosphere became more relaxed. But why is Master Ma looking for Guak Dosu? At the title Master, I naturally spoke down to him while casting the bait to hook him. He has committed a great sin against our sect. All our sect's martial artists are out tracking him now. That's when the second reaction occurred. Gong Zhong's face stiffened slightly and his eyes trembled. He was clearly trying to forcibly hide his panic. This reaction confirmed my guess. That Gong Zhong and Guak Dosu had some kind of relationship. If he had conspired with Guak Dosu and dragged Biok Ri Dan into it, Gong Zhong would have no excuse even if he were to be executed. Just the fact that a Martial Righteous Alliance branch leader had dealings with a heinous criminal was a crime punishable by death. What crime did he commit? It's an internal matter, so I can't tell you. Just know that this is a very important case that even the elders of our family are paying attention to. You can tell by the fact that I came here urgently without an escort, right? I preemptively addressed the fact that I came without an escort in case he might doubt it. Of course. Now that our sect has stepped in, it's only a matter of time before his court. I'll be honest with you, branch leader Gong. I want to catch him before anyone else in our family does. I want to prove that my abilities are superior to the other successors. Gong Zhong swallowed hard. All sorts of thoughts must be running through his mind now. This is the moment to throw the strongest bait. Don't you want to advance to the central headquarters too? At the mention of the central headquarters, Gong Zhong's eyes lit up. I know that many of the Martial Righteous Alliance's local administrators dream of advancing to the Alliance's main headquarters. Advancing to the central headquarters. And with the backing of the Heavenly Blade sect on top of that. If you can find Guak Dosu's whereabouts this time, I'll send you to the main headquarters. Gong Zhong's eyes wavered. Are you serious? I too need someone trustworthy at the main headquarters. I promise you in the name of the Heavenly Blade sect. To minimize any doubt, I stood up. At times like this, one shouldn't sit for too long. Stepping back is actually a way of pushing forward. I'll be waiting for your contact. But you need to find out as quickly as possible. You don't have much time to seize this opportunity. This was the final test. If he finds out as quickly as possible, it would mean his admitting to his crime as quickly as possible. The result was as I expected. 2 days later, Gong Zhong came to the inn where I was waiting. I found out, staking everything I have. He found out the man's whereabouts in just 2 days? Unless Gal Sariang was directing and pouring all of the Martial Righteous Alliance's resources into it, how? If he could find out like this, why hadn't he caught such a vicious criminal until now? What answer could he give if asked that? But blinded by the prospect of promotion, he was admitting to being in league with Guak Dosu himself. He probably knew Guak Dosu's whereabouts all along, and spent the last 2 days verifying if I was real. But there's no way to expose me as a fake Ma Yongqing in just 2 days. He probably only managed to verify a few of the stories I had dropped. Even with just that, he couldn't help but be fooled. The information I had leaked was indeed Alliance Leader level intelligence. Where is he now? He's in Jinan. Jinan! Luckily, it's the very place where the Jinan branch of the black market is located. Guak Dosu had been hiding in a large city with many people. Where in Jinan? I don't know the exact location. My expression hardened for a moment. Are you playing games with me? Are you telling me to search all of Jinan? He hastily said. No, not at all. How could I? There's a way to find him. There's something he's obsessed with. What is it? Gambling. He'd sell his own child for gambling. If you search the gambling dens in Jinan, you'll probably find him. So it's not definite information. No, he'll definitely be in a gambling den. It's suspected that all the murders he committed before were to secure gambling funds. Fine. I'll believe you. And look at this. He brought out something. It was a paper with a sketch of the man's appearance. He has a distinctive scar on his left cheek, so he should be easy to recognize. It was indeed a certain betrayal. If I catch him, I'll push to make you a vice leader of a branch at the Martial Righteous Alliance headquarters. I added one more realistic comment. Of course, it would be a small branch. Even so, going from a branch leader in this backwater to a vice leader of a branch at the headquarters would be a dramatic promotion. I will serve you with utmost loyalty from now on. Gong Zhong bowed right there. Keep this matter strictly confidential. Of course. And how much is the bounty on him? 5,000 Niang. 20,000 Niang? That's quite a sum. I deliberately inflated it by 15,000 Niang. At first, he thought I had misheard. It's not 20,000. But seeing my stern expression, he quickly changed his words. That's right. It's 20,000 Niang. Being used to receiving bribes, he immediately understood my meaning. That he should offer that much for a chance to advance to the central headquarters. He probably has about that much from his ill-gotten gains so far. The 5,000 Niang extorted from my father has now grown to 20,000 with interest. How would you like the payment? I can send it to the battlefield. In small denomination promissory notes that can't be traced. Understood. And come to Jinan yourself with the money in 3 days. I plan to return to my sect right after handing over that useless man's head. Wouldn't it be better to proceed as quickly as possible? Yes, let's do that. I set the meeting place not far from the black market. If things proceed smoothly, I should be able to go to the black market within the promised time. As I stood up, he cautioned me. Be careful. He's a very vicious man. If he massacred an innocent family because of his gambling addiction, he's the worst of the worst. And you're the one who partnered with such a vicious man to make money. Let's see what happens to these two villains. See you in 3 days. Chapter 20, The Rightful Owner of Elixir, 3. I immediately rented a horse and rode to Jinan. After living a life where everything was resolved with a single command, actively moving like this brings a new vitality. There's certainly power in change for people. I'm also freshly aware that change is connected to hope. As soon as I arrived, I went around the gambling houses. But I couldn't find Guak Dosu there. Of course, I fully considered the possibility that he might be wearing a mask or in disguise like me. I didn't need to find him by face. I could just focus on gamblers with martial arts skills. However, the gambling houses were full of insignificant gamblers. First of all, the stakes weren't very high. If Guak Dosu was obsessed with gambling as Gong Zhong said, he wouldn't be satisfied with such small games. Did Gong Zhong deceive me? What if he sent me here and then contacted Guak Dosu to run away? But that possibility was slim. The Gong Zhong I saw wasn't the type to sacrifice himself for someone else. he wouldn't choose a life of being chased by the Heavenly Blade sect forever just to save Guak Dosu. Then he must be somewhere around here. Given the large bounty on him, he'd be cautious. Then a thought suddenly crossed my mind. Could it be? Does that exist here? With Gal Sariang giving daily briefings, I heard all sorts of things happening across the Central Plains. One thing came to mind related to gambling. Secret gambling houses. Literally unauthorized gambling houses, commonly called hidden houses. Licensed gambling houses are strictly managed by the Martial Righteous Alliance. They impose heavy taxes and place various restrictions to prevent people from becoming addicted to gambling and ruining themselves. The limit on betting amounts is one of these. As a result, these hidden houses emerged. Despite strengthening crackdowns every year, they were never completely eradicated. I should check it out. To verify, I went to the largest inn in the area. There's a group of people who know the most information in the martial world. From professional information brokers to merchants wandering the Central Plains, hunters, vagabonds, and one more type we can easily encounter, the inn servants. They hear all sorts of stories being discussed at the inns. After all, inns were the source of all rumor circulating in the martial world. I took a seat at the inn and asked the young servant who came to take my order who the longest-serving servant here was. The young servant pointed out a man. I called him over. Indeed, he looked quite old and had shrewd eyes that seemed to have seen it all. The easiest way to loosen their tongues is money. I placed 10 Niang on my palm. The servant was startled when he saw it. Guests usually tipped servants 1 or 2 coins for their service. And there were far more guests who didn't tip than those who did. This money is yours if you answer just one question I ask. 10 Niang, a stroke of luck that might come once in a few years, made the man's eyes waver. Ask me anything. I'd like to play some cards. There are several gambling houses, but I prefer quieter places. The man's eyes lit up for a moment. Being quick-witted, he seemed to understand my meaning at once. Yes, if he's been a servant in one area for over 10 years, he'd surely know. But it's the kind of information that could get him in trouble if he spoke carelessly. He looked back and forth between me and the money on my palm for a while. Finally, having made up his mind, he lowered his voice and said, "There is a place for those who want somewhere quiet, but where is it?" I put the money in the servant's hand without hesitation. Usually in such cases, you give the money after getting the answer. But I gave the money first. This choice was certainly effective. The servant lowered his voice and said, "About 10 RI west of here, there's a place called Windtooth Den." "Thank you. But you can't just enter. You need an introduction from someone trustworthy." As I stood up, I said, "Don't worry about that part." The person who opened the main gate of Windtooth Den was an old man with a pleasant face. "What brings you here?" I answered nonchalantly. "What else would I come for? I'm here to play." The old man looked me up and down. "I don't recognize your face." "I came on Master Guak's recommendation." "Which Master Guak?" I lightly traced one cheek with my hand. I was imitating the scar shape drawn on Guak Dosu's face sketch. If the old man didn't catch my gesture, it would mean Guak wasn't here, or he was certainly operating with a human skin mask. In that case, I could confirm by saying the name again. Anyway, if Guak Dosu was here, his name would surely work. Indeed, the old man smiled and let down his guard. "Follow me." He guided me to the backyard behind the building. Along the way, he gave a few warnings. Though he put it nicely, it basically meant I'd die if I caused trouble. There was a fairly large building in the backyard. The surrounding walls were extremely high. I could sense the presence of martial artists hiding among the trees planted here and there. If my inner energy was fully recovered, I could have determined not only their martial arts levels but also whether they were yawning, squatting, or standing, but now I could only vaguely sense their positions. While I pretended not to notice and just followed the old man, I was thinking about escape routes for later. Which one to subdue and which way to escape that would be the quickest. There were 2 martial artists at the entrance. They seemed quite skilled. One of them held out his hand. "Hand over anything that could be used as a weapon." I handed him the sword I was wearing. I had left my real sword behind and brought a cheap iron sword, so I didn't mind handing it over. The other man thoroughly searched my body. I could tell he was also checking my martial arts level while examining my body. He finished the check casually. That reaction is exactly how outsiders perceive my current skill level. My body wasn't fully developed yet, and my inner energy was only at 5 years. There are some conveniences to this, actually. The martial artist opened the door and said, "Walk straight this way." I walked down a gloomy, narrow corridor. I thought that if these people decided to, it would be easy to kill someone here. With mediocre martial arts and having handed over weapons, if someone were ambushed while walking in a place like this, they'd have no choice but to die. There was a door at the end of the corridor. Again, 2 quite skilled martial artists were guarding it. Since large sums of money were likely changing hands here, they seemed to employ many skilled individuals. I could sense their confidence from their martial prowess, which was why they didn't use more thorough entry control methods like introduction letters or tokens. I also thought there might be some collusion with the local Martial Righteous Alliance branch leader. When they opened the door, inside was a large hall. Unlike the gloomy corridor, the interior was bright and luxurious. Shapely women were serving drinks here and there, and musicians were performing on one side. It felt like entering a different world through just one door. Large tables were arranged throughout. There were over 20 of them. At each table, anywhere from 3 or 4 to 20 people were engrossed in gambling. The atmosphere was completely different from the regular gambling houses I had seen earlier. The people here looked wealthier, wearing more expensive clothes than those in the regular gambling houses. But they were also much more addicted to gambling. People who couldn't get their fix from regular gambling houses. That's why here, bets start at 10 times the amount of regular gambling houses and can go up to infinity. It's a place where you can experience the thrill of going between heaven and hell in a single game. First, I slowly looked around the place. I noted the arrangement of tables, where the exits were, and where the restrooms were. After familiarizing myself with the layout, I started looking for Guakdosu. I recognized Guakdosu at a glance. Though he had grown his hair long and had a bushy beard, it was definitely him. Fearlessly, he was gambling with his face exposed. He wasn't hiding the distinctive scar on his cheek. Look at this guy. He's completely lost his fear. But soon I could understand why. There were hidden house martial artists scattered throughout the hall. There were about 10 of them, with 5 concentrated around Guakdosu. At first, I thought they might be monitoring him, but watching a bit longer, I realized they were protecting him. This bastard, did he set up his own gambling house? Thinking about it again, that didn't seem to be the case. If he had set up a gambling house, Gong Zhong would have known. He probably had some close relationship with the owner of this place. Maybe he agreed to manage this hidden house, or perhaps he killed someone for them. That's why he could act so boldly, as if it were his own place. Now, what to do? For now, killing him didn't seem difficult. If I attacked suddenly while he was engrossed in gambling, I could kill him with a single strike. Then cut down those who tried to stop me and escape? It's not an impossible method, but there was the variable of an unexpected expert popping up. Moreover, if a big fight broke out, servants or musicians could get hurt. For now, I decided to keep this as a last resort and look for a way to resolve this as quietly as possible and leave. Just then, a seat became available at the table where Guakdosu was sitting. A man stood up, lamenting about his terrible luck today. Looking at him, I thought, the lucky person at a gambling table isn't the one with good cards. It's the one who knows when to get up and leave. Anyway, I didn't hesitate to take the seat he had vacated. I didn't try to hide my presence. Rather, I judged that being noisy and conspicuous would arouse less suspicion. As soon as I sat down, I immediately took out my stake money and piled it high on the table. I've bet my life. No one's leaving until someone dies today. My manner of speaking made me look exactly like a sucker who came to lose money, so Guakdosu, sitting across from me, grinned. The scar on his cheek twisted as he smiled. What if you die? The other gamblers at the table snickered. I snorted, as if not to be intimidated, and said loudly, HMPH. We'll see whose luck runs out first. Come on, deal the cards. Chapter 21, The Rightful Owner of Elixir, 4. The cards used at this table weren't the flower cards, Wape, used by ordinary people, but sword cards, Jiampi. It's a method of comparing the superiority of famous sword techniques and inner energy cultivation methods throughout history by matching them in pairs. These cards are mainly used by martial artists, and there were various types of gambling with slightly modified rules, including not only sword cards but also knife cards, dopi, using knife techniques, spear cards, changpei, for spear techniques, martial cards, mupi, encompassing all martial arts, and alliance cards, maringpi, created using various organizations of the Martial Righteous Alliance. Gal Sariang once said that after my death, the Heavenly Martial Heart Guarding Technique and the Soul Reaping Azura Sword Technique would probably be added to the sword cards. Thinking that my martial arts could now be seen even in gambling dens, I couldn't help but smile wryly. As the game progressed, I started to lose money little by little. Not only Guak Dosu but also the others at the table were quite skilled. I had brought 3,000 Niang with me. While this would be an enormous sum in a regular gambling house, looking at the stakes here, I could lose it all in 2 or 3 hours of bad luck. Fortunately, though I wasn't an expert gambler, I had some basic skills. The best gambler in the Martial Righteous Alliance was Baek Seongwon, the leader of the Crimson Dragon Regiment. Once at a drinking party, I had learned a few techniques that could be used in gambling houses. These were techniques that could be used purely without using martial arts. That proved quite helpful. It made me appear to have the skills of someone who had frequented gambling dens. I kept losing 3 hands and then winning 1. Just as when I first sat down, I didn't hide my presence. These damn cards just won't come. One of the gamblers laughed and said, "Some days they come, some days they don't. That's life." I shouted angrily, "Fuck this! Who are you to lecture me? Save that crap for your kids. Hey, let's not bring families into this. What an old fogey." Everyone laughed. They were laughing, but their eyes were like those of beasts eyeing their prey. All the crimes Guak Dosu had committed were malicious murders. So I expected him to be a very rough and fierce man, but at least at the gambling table, he was behaving like a different person. He was relaxed and at ease, as if he were some great hero. I couldn't tell if it was compensatory psychology, human duality, or if he was just crazy about gambling. Another hour passed. I had already lost half of my money, 1,500 Niang, and their wariness towards me had dissipated as much as the money I had lost. Finally, Guak Dosu stood up, saying he was going to the restroom. I stood up as if I had been waiting for this. "Brother, let's go together. And while we're at it, let's change our seats." "Brother? Where's brotherhood in a gambling den? The losers are suckers, and the winners are all bastards." I looked at each person sitting at the table. Ugly bastard, old bastard, stupid bastard. Those sitting there frowned, but I didn't miss Guak Dosu at the end. Scarface bastard. For a moment, Guak Dosu's face twitched. Don't foam at the mouth just because you lost a few coins. What? A few coins? You call this a few coins? As I approached him with an angry face, one of the middle-aged martial artists standing behind rushed forward to block me. "Get out of my way. Let go." The man who blocked me glared at me coldly. "Take it easy. You bastard, who are you?" "I'm a customer here." I said, "Take it easy." As the man exuded killing intent, I involuntarily flinched and stepped back. "Why don't you just stab me with that sword and take all my money?" HMPH. I'm too disgusted to continue. I gathered the remaining promissory notes on the table. Since half of my money was still left, I was certain they wouldn't let me leave like this. Sure enough, Guak Dosu, who had been standing behind, stepped forward. "You fool! How dare you act so rudely to an esteemed guest?" He pretended to scold the martial artist who had blocked me earlier, then approached me with a friendly face. "Look here, brother. Didn't you say with your own mouth that no one could leave until someone died? I don't want to back out either, but people have feelings, you know. Come now, cheer up. What would that uncultured swordsman know?" Guak Dosu put one arm around my shoulder as if in a friendly embrace, while grasping my wrist with his other hand. At the same time, he injected a stream of inner energy to examine my body. After confirming my meager inner energy, a look of contempt appeared on Guak Dosu's face. His expression seemed to say, "I thought as much." Of course, I too had learned something about him. At the very least, he had the skill to inject inner energy to check another's internal energy. "Didn't you say you were going to the restroom?" I answered his question in a slightly softer tone. "I'm fine. You go ahead, brother. I mean, big brother. No, let's go together." I'll change seats with you when we get back. Yeah, when things aren't going well, you should change. He ended up pulling me along, and I found myself being dragged. When the middle-aged martial artist tried to follow, Guak Dosu yelled at him, asking where he thought he was going. Come on, brother. Let's go take a good leak and start over. Half an hour later. One of the waiting martial artists glanced towards the restroom. A martial artist standing nearby said to the middle-aged martial artist who seemed to be in charge. They're taking too long. Let's go check. The middle-aged martial artist took his subordinate and went to the restroom. As they approached, a strong smell of blood hit them. Damn it! The middle-aged martial artist kicked open the door and rushed in. An unexpected sight greeted them inside. A headless corpse lay on the floor. This bastard was asking for it and ended up dead. Where's Master Guak? The subordinate examining the corpse cried out in shock. This corpse is Master Guak. What? The middle-aged man's eyes widened. He quickly examined the corpse. It really was Guak Dosu. Where's the other one? Find that bastard. The subordinates hurriedly ran out. But how did he cut the neck? It wasn't a wound torn by hand. Guak Dosu's neck was cleanly cut. Just then, the subordinate who was with him was startled. Gasp! What's wrong? Captain, your knife. The man was shocked and looked down at his waist. The dagger he had been carrying for self-defense was gone. When did he? He realized that his dagger had been taken when he briefly scuffled with the man while blocking him from rushing at Guak Dosu earlier. The fact that no one noticed despite many watching eyes meant that the opponent's sleight of hand was extraordinary. The subordinates who had run out came rushing back in. The guys guarding the back door were taken out. It seems he's already escaped. The man gritted his teeth and said, Send everyone out to chase him. Circulate that bastard's description. Hurry. In a deserted forest. Gong Jong swallowed hard as he stared at Guak Dosu's head placed on a rock. Why are you so surprised? Isn't this the expected result? Ha ha, you're absolutely right. But did he not struggle while being killed? He must be worried that Guak Dosu might have revealed his name. He died without even a chance to struggle. I see. That's a relief. The money. Here it is. 20,000 Nyang. He handed me the leather bag he had been carrying. When I opened it, it was full of small denomination promissory notes. The original bounty of 5,000 Nyang plus the 15,000 Nyang he had personally prepared. Congratulations on personally catching the villain of your family. Usually, the bounty is paid after several investigations. They need to verify if the dead person is indeed the villain with a bounty on their head. Gong Jong was skipping that process and paying the money. Of course, he would be able to recognize Guak Dosu just by seeing the severed head. I don't need to count it, right? Of course not. I checked it twice myself. Indeed, our branch leader Gong is meticulous. I like that very much. Now prepare to go to the headquarters. Thank you so much. When his joy was at its peak, I abruptly said. But this guy said something strange before he died. He said he knew branch leader Gong. Gong Jong was startled and denied it. Nonsense. He said you two conspired to rob the Biok clan sword manor. No, that's not true. Gong Jong's voice trembled severely, even stuttering. I actually like that better. Pardon. I prefer someone who's appropriately worldly. Naive people are frustrating. Sometimes one might need to work with evil. That's how bold actions can be taken. Don't you think? Well, yes, but... Gong Jong was bewildered by these unexpected words. Why did you do it? Tell me honestly. By my standards, that level of flaw isn't a problem. It's rather an advantage. Gong Jong looked back and forth between the severed head and me. His internal conflict didn't last long. He seemed to judge that since Guak Dosu had already spilled everything, trying to deceive me would only lose his trust. He was a complete good-for-nothing. He needed to be taught a lesson. Ha ha ha. Splendid. Just as he was feeling relieved by my response. SHHHK. I took off my human skin mask. Long time no see. Gong Jong's eyes widened in shock. he was probably more surprised than he had ever been in his entire life. "No, you? You? How?" I smiled and said, "If you want to teach someone a lesson, you should use a rod, not take their money." Gong Jong, trembling all over in shock, looked at the leather bag on my shoulder. "My money, give me back my money. Money is the first thing on your mind, isn't it?" Gong Jong tried to draw his sword. But I, having anticipated the situation, was faster. I struck out like lightning. Shik! Puck! The dagger pierced straight into his neck. Cuck! Gong Jong grabbed my arm. Knowing he would die if the dagger was pulled out, he sent me a desperate look while his whole body convulsed. I looked at Gong Jong with the coldest gaze I had ever given. "We appointed you to protect the martial artists, didn't we? We didn't appoint you to do this kind of thing." This was not only the revenge of Byok Ridan as an individual but also the anger and punishment of Cheon Ha-jin, the martial righteous alliance leader. Gong Jong wore an expression of incomprehension. As I had no intention of engaging in further conversation with scum like Gong Jong, I mercilessly pulled out the dagger. Gong Jong spewed blood and fell backward. I put the human skin mask I had taken off onto his face. The corpse would be discovered, and it would be revealed that Gong Jong had infiltrated wearing a human skin mask to kill Guak Dosu. There should be at least one person among the gambling den people who knows about their relationship, so they won't think it's out of the blue. Even if they do, what does it matter? There's no clue that can reveal my involvement. Leaving behind the corpse growing cold, I left the place. My steps were headed towards the Jinan branch of the black market. Fortunately, the promised 10 days had not yet passed. Chapter 22, The Rightful Owner of Elixir, 5. Somehow I thought you'd managed to get the money, and you really did. The old man of the black market was surprised that his prediction had come true. Your parents must be blessed with a filial child in their later years. Remembering that I had answered that I wanted to buy the elixir for filial piety when asked why, the old man laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha, that's a good thing." "Yes, a very good thing indeed. Here's the money." I handed him 44,000 Niang. Though I still had a few thousand Niang left, 44,000 was an astronomical amount. It was enough money for an ordinary person to live luxuriously for a lifetime. No, it was enough for even their children to live that way. If one weren't a martial artist, they wouldn't understand using that money to gain 15 years of internal energy. But for a martial artist, gaining 15 years of internal energy is like buying 15 years of time and effort. For some, 15 years of effort might be worth 4,000 Niang, but for others, it could be worth 400 million. This is where the saying that the value of elixir can't be measured in money comes from. The old man took the money. Without paying first, you can never see the goods. It's useless to take the old man hostage or kill him. Only after the money is delivered internally does the item pass through a gauntlet of deadly traps and mechanisms. This is why black market transactions have become safer than before. After about a quarter of an hour, the old man brought a small box. Opening it, I found the 1,000-year broken young herb inside. It was in excellent condition. The old man smiled and said, "Didn't I tell you? You have very good luck." I closed the box again, tucked it into my clothes, and stood up. "It's thanks to your consideration. I'm truly grateful." As I walked out, I heard the old man's soft voice behind me. Spiritual medicines always have their rightful owners. Immediately after, there was a contented humming, as if his life philosophy had been proven correct. An hour later, I was sitting in a cave in the nearby mountains. Before me was the 1,000-year broken young herb I had just bought from the black market. The 1,000-year broken young herb. It's known as a spiritual herb that grants longevity without illness to ordinary people and increases internal energy by a minimum of 10 years to a maximum of 15 years for martial artists. While most high-level martial artists could gain 10 years of internal energy from the 1,000-year broken young herb, I would be able to gain 15 years. This is because the exceptional ability of the heavenly martial heart guarding technique allows me to absorb the maximum potential of elixirs. This is the first elixir I'm taking with Byok Ridan's body. As internal energy increases, the effectiveness of elixirs decreases. This means that no matter how many elixirs you take, your internal energy won't increase infinitely. For example, if you gained 15 years of internal energy from the first elixir, taking the same medicine again might give you 10 years, and the third time only 3 years. The effect drops off sharply like this. The exact numbers vary depending on what mental cultivation method the user has learned and to what extent. What's clear is that as the internal energy in the danjin increases, the effect diminishes, and the same applies to taking large amounts of the same type of elixir. This is why you can't infinitely increase your internal energy just by having a lot of money. It means that later on, you might have to spend hundreds of thousands of Niang just to increase your internal energy by a few months. Anyway, the reason I went through the trouble of buying this 1000-year broken yang herb is not just to increase my internal energy, but primarily to break through the Ren and Du meridians. When the Ren and Du meridians are broken through, the true qi in the body can circulate perfectly through all the meridians, allowing internal energy to exert its maximum effect. Not only does the size of the danjin increase, but it also becomes much easier to use difficult and complex techniques like the last three forms of the Autumn Soul Azura Sword technique more smoothly and naturally. In simple terms, the same 5 years of internal energy becomes 5 years of much more powerful internal energy. The potency of the 1000-year broken yang herb was sufficient to attempt breaking through the Ren and Du meridians. The only worry was whether Byok Ridan's body could handle it, but fortunately, this body was born sturdy. Of course, even attempting this is only possible because it's me. It's easy to say the breaking through the Ren and Du meridians, but normally it's only possible with the help of family elders or old masters standing by, and even then, countless martial artists have died or become crippled in the process. Well then, I'm counting on you. I carefully took the 1000-year broken yang herb. I chewed it as finely as possible and swallowed. The herb that passed down my throat began to quickly dissolve and be absorbed throughout my body. SSSSSSS. Without missing the moment, I began to absorb that energy into my meridians using the heavenly martial heart guarding technique. Swish swish swish. The ecstasy of absorbing the energy of her elixir into the meridians is as exciting and thrilling as making love to a woman. Squeezing and squeezing again. I completely absorbed all the energy of the elixir without missing even a single bit. Now, if I were to send the energy that has circulated through my entire body into my danjin, it would become 15 years of internal energy. But I didn't send that energy directly to my danjin. I began to increase the speed of the energy flowing through my meridians. I planned to break through the Ren and Du meridians consecutively without dragging it out. First, the Ren meridian. SSSSSSSSS. The energy of the 1000-year broken yang herb began to rush towards meridians it had never flowed through before. Pop! The Huiyin point was broken through first. Pain rushed in, but I could easily endure this level. Pop! Pop! The Chugu and Zhongji points were broken through in succession. Fortunately, Byok Ridan's body was able to withstand this process sufficiently. I've been cultivating qi with the heavenly martial heart guarding technique for 70 years. At least when it comes to meridians, I'm confident I'm better than even divine doctors. Pop! 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 Xiaowan, Zhongwan, Yutang were broken through in succession, and finally, the Chengjiang point was cleared smoothly. The Ren meridian had been completely broken through without any major crisis. Yes, I am a martial artist who can use the expression "this much is nothing" when it comes to breaking through the Ren and Du meridians. Riding the momentum of breaking through the Ren meridian, I started to break through the Du meridian. Pop! First, the Changchang point was broken through, followed by Yongshu, Shenzhou, and then the Baihui point was broken through. Pain followed each breakthrough. I could endure the pain. Compared to the pain that weak martial artists have to endure, this pain is a pleasant one. Qianding, Shangxing, and Suliao points were broken through in succession. At the moment the final Yinjia point was broken through. Bang! A loud noise echoed in my head, as if announcing the birth of new meridians. I didn't collapse or scream at the last moment like ordinary people. Only a small smile of self-congratulation formed on my lips. It was a perfect breakthrough of the Ren and Du meridians. I'm certain that no one else in the martial world could have achieved such a fast and clean breakthrough. I slowly got up and examined the inside of my body. After breaking through the Ren and Du meridians, my body's condition had completely changed. The movement of inner force flowing through the meridians became incomparably faster. This feeling of inner force freely racing through my body is so good. Now my body has been unleashed from its restraints. I can't confirm it without a mirror, but my eyes have probably become much calmer. I checked my danjin's internal energy first. With 15 years of internal energy added to my original internal energy, my internal energy has now reached 20 years. I now have as many years of internal energy as Byok Ridan's age. But how can this 20 years be compared to anyone else's 20 years of internal energy? It was an incredibly profound internal energy created by the heavenly martial heart guarding technique. With this level of internal energy, I should be able to kill most opponents. Phew. I can relax a bit now. Although I still can't use the fourth form, now that I've broken through the Ren and Du meridians, I should reach 1 Gapja, 60 years, of internal energy within 4 or 5 years. Ha ha ha. I left the cave with a pleased laugh. As soon as I left the cave, I kicked off the ground and soared into the air. Originally, I could have shot up as if piercing the sky, but now my limit was the top of the tree standing at the cave entrance. Swish! The sword energy emitted from my sword tore through the air. It was incomparably more powerful than when I killed the bloodhound earlier. Whoosh! True chi was emitted in the opposite direction. Again, it was incomparably more powerful than when I killed Yang Jiaiqiol. If someone were hit by this attack now, both their corpses would have exploded into pieces. After using these two techniques in succession, I stood on a tree branch. The branch bent greatly but didn't break. When my internal energy exceeds 1 Gapja, the branch won't even move. Even though it was only a 15-year increase in internal energy, this improvement is so exciting and fun. When was the last time I felt this kind of enjoyment? I hope I can continue to feel this enjoyment in the future. I hope this path of learning martial arts will be different from my previous life. And I hope that at the end of that path, I'll find what I've been looking for. I want to see the sword of my heart. I could see a squirrel crawling between trees far away. With the breakthrough of the Ren and Du meridians and the increase in internal energy, all my bodily senses, including eyesight, had improved. At my peak, I could see even ants at this distance if I concentrated. Someday. I leapt down swiftly. It was a light-footed technique, as light as a feather and as soft as down. Chapter 23, The Message My Death Conveys, 1. I returned home. I was supposed to have come back from training in the mountains, but only Guangdu knew that I had gone to catch Guak Dosu. Young master, I can't live out my natural lifespan because of you. Indeed, his eyes were sunken. It seems he hadn't slept properly again, worrying about me. You fool, don't worry about me. How can I not worry? I'd rather die than suffer like this. So what happened? Did you really catch that bastard? I nodded firmly. I'm someone who absolutely can't live with debts. Did you kill him? Of course. Guangdu covered his mouth and trembled. You fool, save your shock and horror for later when you hear the news that Gong Zhong, the branch alliance leader, has gone missing. By the way, did you practice the mental cultivation diligently? Show me. Because I was worrying about someone. With an uncertain face, Guangdu sat down and began to circulate his qi. I inserted a strand of inner force to check if he was circulating his qi properly. Despite his exaggeration, he was doing it accurately as I had taught him. That's enough. This level is excellent. Really? Guangdu was overjoyed. Truly, if I praised him even one more word, it seemed he might burst into tears. Why are you so happy? Because it's the first praise I've heard from you since I started learning martial arts. Stop attaching unnecessary meaning to everything. No. This is an unforgettable moment for me. Suddenly, I thought of Baekpyo, who had been the head of my guards. He too was a truly sentimental person, rejoicing at the sight of the first snow. Come to think of it, coincidentally, the people closest to me all have this sentimental side. Now, I'll teach you some forms. Ah. Guangdu was moved again. I had him bring the cheap sword he had bought. I thought I should buy him a decent sword soon. First, I taught him 3 forms out of the 7 forms of the 7 forms of the Southern Sea. There wasn't any particular reason, other than thinking that repeating just one form would be boring, and teaching more than 4 might confuse him. Once you're familiar with these 3 forms, I'll teach you the rest. Thank you, young master. Practice without even sleeping. I'll test you at random. What if I die from overwork? Lazy people never die from overwork. What if I fall into qi deviation? That only happens to smart people. Guangdu pouted. But I could feel it. How happy Guangdu was. He'll probably practice skimping on sleep. Am I not worried that he might really die from overwork? Not at all. Guangdu is a smart fellow. I felt it when he gathered information before. He has an instinct for sensing and avoiding danger. he'll adjust his training intensity well on his own. After teaching him the 3 forms, I turned to leave, but Guangdu said, "But young master, something's different about you. He really has a keen eye." Noticing a change that even my parents didn't see. "What is it?" "I'm not sure what, but somehow you seem calmer." After examining my face from various angles, Guangdu suddenly exclaimed in surprise. "Gasp! Don't tell me. Did you get a woman this time? Right? Did you sleep with her?" "You did, didn't you?" "You fool, I didn't even get to see a woman." I just shrugged my shoulders once to keep him curious and walked out. Guangdu shouted from behind. "You shouldn't betray Miss Song. You fool, you need to have mutual trust to even talk about betrayal. Just focus on your training. And don't betray yourself." The next day, the news I had been waiting for finally arrived. Guangdu came running in a hurry and shouted, "Young master! Something terrible has happened. The alliance leader has passed away." It felt strange to hear about my own death through someone else. It's been a month and a half since I died. The fact that they're only announcing it now means they must have had a lot of deliberation about selecting the next alliance leader. There must have been meetings every day, and the heads of each organization must have been engaged in intense power struggles. Depending on who becomes the alliance leader, their own positions could be in jeopardy. The one thing that puts my mind at ease is that the martial world is peaceful. There won't be any internal or external forces trying to take over the martial righteous alliance immediately. Oh really? What kind of reaction is that? What reaction were you expecting? Should I shed tears? You should at least be surprised. I am surprised. You don't know how surprised I was. I really didn't expect to die like that. The martial world has been turned upside down now. Not just martial artists, but everyone with a mouth is talking about the alliance leader. Everyone's gathering in taverns, it's chaos. Let's go too. Guangdu pulled on my arm. I went along pretending to be reluctant, but in truth, I was more curious. How everyone was talking about my death. The dead remain in various ways. Some are beautifully idealized, some fall to the bottom, and others are forgotten. What about me? Indeed, not just the nearby taverns, but people in the marketplace were all talking about me. How did he die? Was he assassinated? No, I heard he just died in his sleep. He was blessed, truly blessed. Anyway, who do you think will be the next alliance leader? Yeah, I wonder. I'm worried. All sorts of people will be rushing in to take the alliance leader position. Is there even a proper candidate for alliance leader? No. Cheon Ha-jin held onto it for too long. True. He held it for over 30 years. I was slightly hurt by the phrase held onto it. I thought I had lived my whole life sacrificing for the martial artists. Is this all the evaluation I get? Moreover, there wasn't a single word of condolence for my death. It feels like my life lived for the martial world has been completely denied. I wanted to slap each of them on the back of the head and say, "You fools, I lived a life where I couldn't even sleep properly because I was worried about you all." On the other hand, I also thought, isn't the alliance leader position one that naturally attracts criticism? They all need to vent their frustrations accumulated in real life by criticizing like this. Fine, go ahead and criticize. If that relieves your anger, criticize as much as you want. The truly bad people won't be criticizing me in places like this anyway. They'll be engrossed in fulfilling their desires in dark places, like Yang Jiaqiao or Gong Zhong who were killed by me. At that moment, Guangdu, who was sitting across from me, suddenly said, "I wonder what kind of person the alliance leader was. Among the people in this tavern, you know best. Because he's sitting right in front of you. Well, who knows? It must be very regrettable. Dying in the position of alliance leader. Why? Well, you know? Because you're dying while in the happiest position in the world. Ah. If it were me, I'd be too upset to even die. Happy? Was I truly happy? Everyone feared and found me difficult to approach. I had loyal subordinates who would give their lives at my command, but there was an invisible wall between them and me. Even with Gal Sariang, the commander-in-chief, I never had a deep conversation. No one ever spoke their true feelings to me. I was the same. Bekpyo, who was in charge of my security, was the most comfortable, but even he couldn't completely shake off the distance created by our positions as Alliance leader and guard. At least, that's how it must have been for him. The loneliness of being above all others. I don't know if I was happy or not, but at least I'm certain I lived a lonely life. By the way, how do they choose the next Alliance leader? I shook my head at Guangdu's question. I don't know either. I can't tell you, but I know exactly. If the Alliance leader had designated a successor, that successor would take over the position. Considering my age of 70, it would have been natural to suggest establishing a successor, but all my subordinates were wary of my reaction. I was in such good health, and the issue of succession was a very sensitive topic. Anyway, no one thought I would die. I was so healthy, and my martial arts had reached the peak. If there's no successor, the heads of the top 10 organizations within the Martial Righteous Alliance gather to nominate candidates, and then they vote to decide the Alliance leader. That's how I was chosen before. If the previous Alliance leader hadn't been poisoned by the 13 dark sects, I might have lived as a free person in the martial world forever. Anyway, I heard later that the heads of the 10 organizations at that time unanimously agreed to make me the Alliance leader. That's how much my skills had shaken the martial world. In any case, that's just what the Alliance rules say, but in the end, the will of Gal Sariang, the Commander-in-Chief, will be heavily reflected. Among the 10 organizations, the ones directly under me with the strongest military power will support him. The problem is that there's no strong candidate for Alliance leader that comes to mind immediately. Perhaps that's why my death wasn't announced even after a month and a half. Still, the reason I'm at ease is because of my trust in Gal Sariang. He should be able to lead the Martial Righteous Alliance well in my absence and select an excellent next Alliance leader. Young Master, let's have a drink. A great elder of the martial world has passed away. We should have a drink in his memory. Yes, in the end, it's only you. All right, order the most expensive alcohol. Do you have money? Order a drink to celebrate becoming a martial artist. When you put it like that, I can't refuse. How weak you are to persuasion. Fine. I'll buy a drink. Guangdu shouted to the innkeeper. Give us some alcohol here. Something cheap and tasty. I smiled looking at Guangdu. Thank you. For at least pouring a drink for my death. I slowly turned my head to look out the window. Towards the Martial Righteous Alliance that must be somewhere far away. Commander Gal, please choose a good Alliance leader. Chapter 24, The Message My Death Conveys, 2. Gal Sariang was looking out the window. He had finally announced the Alliance leader's death after postponing it repeatedly. At first, he couldn't believe his death. How could the Alliance leader, who he had been talking to just moments ago, be dead? He was certain he had been murdered. He immediately called for a divine doctor to examine the body. But they couldn't find anything unusual. It was determined to be a natural death. The Alliance leader's behavior had been strange on the day he died. But it wasn't strange enough to be connected to his death. He never imagined Cheon Ha-jin would die so anticlimactically. He was so dumbfounded that he couldn't even shed tears when he saw his corpse. He wasn't given time to properly grieve and dwell on his sorrow. Tasks piled up like mountains. Things he hadn't even considered until yesterday. Of course, the most important task was selecting the next Alliance leader. Even though the leader was dead, the Martial Righteous Alliance had to keep running. We can't postpone the vote any longer. Gal Sariang didn't respond to the low voice behind him. After standing like that for a moment, Gal Sariang turned around. The man sitting at the table drinking tea was like a well-forged sword himself. Even though he was holding a teacup, he looked as dangerous as if he were holding a sword. He was the central figure among the heads of the 10 major organizations of the Martial Righteous Alliance. To briefly introduce the 10 organizations, first, there were 3 organizations that were directly under the Alliance leader and only followed his orders. The first was the Bright Moon Regiment, 1, the second was the Iron Cavalry Regiment, 2, and the third was the Thousand Bow Regiment, 3. These were called the 3 crucial groups of the Martial Righteous Alliance. The Bright Moon Regiment was an organization of masters using various weapons, known for their incredible individual martial arts prowess. It was also the only organization among the 10 whose numbers and scale were unknown to outsiders. The man sitting and drinking tea now was Ju Cheol Ryong, 4, the head of the Bright Moon Regiment. Next, the Iron Cavalry Regiment was literally an Iron Cavalry unit. 500 martial artists armed with long spears, riding horses covered in iron armor. They weren't just relying on armor and horses, but each was a master, and they used perfect formation techniques, making them an incredibly powerful organization. The 1,000 Bow Regiment was, as the name suggests, an organization of archers. They had selected only the best archers, and their number was a whopping 1,000. Imagine 1,000 trained archers firing 1,000 arrows. These three organizations were the three crucial groups of the Martial Righteous Alliance. It was known that they never moved without the Alliance leader's orders. The remaining 7 organizations were as follows. First, the Righteous Thought Pavilion, 5, a strongly information-oriented organization led by himself as the Commander-in-Chief, the Alliance Protection Regiment, 6, for guarding the Alliance leader, led by Bekpyo. Next, there was the White Tiger Regiment, 7, in charge of the Alliance's defense, and the Crimson Dragon Regiment, 8, in charge of external support. Generally, when people referred to Martial Righteous Alliance martial artists, they meant the martial artists of these two groups. They were the organizations with the largest numbers, with the White Tiger Regiment having 3,000 members and the Crimson Dragon Regiment having a massive 8,000. The Law Enforcement Hall, 9, responsible for inspection and law enforcement, and the Treasury, 10, in charge of the Martial Righteous Alliance's finances, were also included in the 10 major organizations. Finally, there was the Council of Elders, where retired old masters gathered. Because there were many potential issues, it was difficult to enter the Council of Elders, and even if one did, they were bound by the most regulations. These 10 organizations' heads would elect the next alliance leader. At first, everything was going smoothly. Although the alliance leader hadn't designated a successor, he had someone in mind. Someone he thought could manage things reasonably well. The person he had in mind was Yop Mugil, 11, the head of the Lightning Blade sect, 12. He had good character, his sect had a good reputation, and above all, he was strong in martial arts. Although the Lightning Blade sect wasn't one of the 5 great sects of the Central Plains, it was generally agreed that in terms of individual martial arts, he was the strongest. He thought everyone would naturally follow if he recommended him, but a variable emerged at the last minute. The figure present here now. Ju Cheol Ryong, the head of the Bright Moon Regiment, had put forward a new candidate. He never dreamed that the head of the Bright Moon Regiment would nominate a candidate without discussing it with him. The bigger problem was that the person he recommended was someone who absolutely should not become the alliance leader, in his judgment. It was Ma Bongi, the head of the Heavenly Blade sect, one of the 5 great sects of the Central Plains and known as the top sect of the northern region. Ma Bongi's complicated issues with women were an open secret. He strongly opposed, saying that one could tell everything from this, but Ju Cheol Ryong pushed forward regardless. He postponed the vote for now. He had a bad feeling about it. As expected, he had already secured 6 votes. The Bright Moon Regiment, Iron Cavalry Regiment, Crimson Dragon Regiment, Law Enforcement Hall, Treasury, and even the Council of Elders. He had co-opted all the core organizations. He postponed it 2 more times after that. He used every method he could to delay the vote. In the meantime, he tried to change their minds. But the result was failure. Instead, one of his votes went over to their side. While he was failing to turn their hearts back, they brazenly co-opted even the head of the White Tiger Regiment. Now their votes had become 7. It was a perfect defeat. How could this happen? Now Gal Sariang was certain. Everything had been prepared long ago. The alliance leader must have been assassinated. Ma Bongi. Was it his doing? But the Ma Bongi he knew wasn't meticulous enough to commit such an act. Had he misjudged him? If there was another mastermind behind this? Then why Ma Bongi? If they were this capable, they would have put forward a more plausible figure than Ma Bongi. It was truly full of incomprehensible things. It's time to make a decision. If the vote proceeds like this, Ma Bongi will become the alliance leader. Ju Cheol Ryong was someone who had sworn life or death loyalty when the alliance leader was alive. He never dreamed he would lead such an affair. Sariang. You still have a long way to go. He thought that his pride in helping Cheon Ha-jin achieve unification of the Central Plains might have become old and turned into arrogance. He had thought Cheon Ha-jin's later years were the most stable period in the history of the martial world, but while they were intoxicated with peace, the roots of the Martial Righteous Alliance had been rotting. Hiding his bitter self-reproach, Gal Sariang smiled leisurely. While principles are important, I think it's also important to uphold the late alliance leader's will. The late Alliance leaders will. What do you mean? As you know, the Alliance leader was someone who dedicated his life for ordinary martial artists. He was particularly wary of the 5 great sects of the Central Plains disturbing the martial world. You know that, right? Although he showed a displeased expression, it was undeniable, so Juchiol Ryong nodded slightly. Gal Sariang calmly continued. If we decide to select the next Alliance leader from among them, wouldn't that be going against the Alliance leader's wishes? But Juchiol Ryong had no intention of backing down. Your words have some merit, Commander, but doesn't the Alliance have clear rules that must be followed? I think it's right to select the Alliance leader according to the principles. I will consider it carefully. If you delay any further, we will proceed with the vote excluding the Commander. After spitting out these words like a declaration of war, Juchiol Ryong left the room. At last, Gal Sariang sighed. With 2 of the 3 crucial groups turning their backs, there was nothing more he could do now. He turned his head back to the window. He could see martial artists busily coming and going in the training grounds. They were all wearing white martial outfits and white headbands, mourning Cheon Ha-jin's death. The master of this place was now dead, but the Martial Righteous Alliance was running as usual. No, it was now writhing and struggling even more than when he was alive. Alliance leader, you shouldn't have left like that. Baekpyo stood in the middle of the Alliance leaders' hall. This place had been empty since Cheon Ha-jin died. Baekpyo walked to one side of the wall. The history left by the Alliance leader was recorded on the wall. The legendary battles left by Cheon Ha-jin. He didn't know how many times he had looked at it now, which he had only glanced at casually when he was alive. When a new Alliance leader is chosen, this wall will be erased and a new history will be recorded. As the head of the Alliance Protection Group, he too will have to protect the new Alliance leader. Will that make him forget Cheon Ha-jin? After circling around the walls once, he stopped in front of the throne. The throne where the Alliance leader used to sit was empty. He recalled Cheon Ha-jin's face laughing heartily. It felt like he might walk in laughing at any moment. Ha ha ha, Baekpyo. Come here and have a drink with me. You'll get sick if you're always so tense, you'll get sick. With you here, I can sleep with both legs stretched out, can't I? Thank you, really thank you. I heard your wife is very ill. I'll give you a few days off, so go take good care of her. Ha ha, this is an order. An Alliance leader's order. Remember when we used to fight like crazy in the old days? Do you remember? I still remember those times. Though you all suffered terribly. Ha ha ha. The Alliance leader's words were still vivid in his ears. Tears welled up in Baekpyo's eyes and then rolled down his cheeks. Alliance leader. Once the tears started, they kept flowing. Alliance leader. The tears kept pouring. He felt guilty for not being able to protect him. He felt remorseful that he should have taken better care of the Alliance leader's health. Sitting on the floor, Baekpyo continued to cry. His whole body trembled and his throat choked up. I want to see you again. Alliance leader. In that place where no one answered, only Baekpyo's sorrowful cries echoed.